This day in sports history. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. It's September 9th, and on this day in 1972, it was the greatest miscarriage of justice in sports when the gold medal was stolen from the U.S. men's basketball team. So even if you're a casual sports fan, you probably know a little about this game, but to refresh your memory, this was the gold medal basketball game between the U.S. and the Soviets during the 1972 Olympics in Munich. The U.S. team was made up of collegiate players, and they were the youngest team in the tournament. And even though they did not have the best college player in the nation at the time, Bill Walton, who was protesting the Nixon administration and the continued involvement of the U.S. military in Vietnam, they were still the best team there. Brazil was the only team thought to be able to contend with the Americans, and the U.S. had beaten them by 7 already earlier in the tournament. Now, the U.S. had never lost in Olympic play. They were a perfect 63-0 coming into this one. And to be honest, this game really should have never been close, but it was. In fact, the Soviets controlled the game for 99.9% of it, leading by 5 at the half, and they were up 10 with 10 minutes to play. But the U.S. fought back, and when Doug Collins was fouled on a layup attempt with 3 seconds left in the game, he sank a pair of free throws to give the Americans a 1-point lead, their first of the game. Now, that foul on Collins was despicable. He was undercut by the Russian defender, and he went flying into the stanchion. But he got up, a little dazed and confused, gathered himself together, and he hit both free throws. Now, the controversy really starts with Collins' second free throw. As he was about to release that shot, the horn sounded inadvertently. The shot went in, and it counted. The Soviets grabbed the ball as it dropped through and immediately inbounded the ball. But at half court, play was stopped, with the Russian coach screaming that he called a timeout. But no timeout was ever taken. Instead, they reset back to the baseline to throw it in again. But the clock operator had not reset the clock to 3 seconds yet. Didn't matter to the clueless ref. He handed the ball to the Soviet player on the baseline. The inbound pass came in again. The Soviets attempted a 3/4 length shot. The horn sounded to end the game, and the Americans celebrated on the court. They had won the gold medal. The celebration lasted for a few minutes. But while the Americans were celebrating their legitimate win in the gold medal game, a courtside official, and I'm not talking about a guy with a whistle here, I'm talking about the Secretary General of FIBA, Great Britain's Dr. William Jones, came down to the floor and he told the referees that the Soviets should have been given a timeout before the first inbounds pass. The game was not over, and 3 more seconds were put back on the clock. U.S. coach Hank Iba flew into a rage, and he argued a blue streak, but to no avail. Now, the Soviets had a third try to inbound the ball. The Russian coach inserted a man to throw a court-length pass, and as the referee handed the ball to the inbounder, he motioned to 7'4" Tom McMillan to back away from the inline, even though there was not a rule to prevent him guarding the inbounder. In fact, on the previous throw-in, he allowed McMillan to guard the inbounder. But McMillan decided to comply instead of argue in the midst of all this chaos. And he didn't take just a couple of steps back. He backed up 20 feet, giving the inbounder a clear path to throw a perfect full-court strike to Alexander Belov, who used his body to push both undersized American defenders away from him, and he made the short shot. No more redos, no more time on the clock. That was it. The Russians had stolen the gold medal. There was an appeal made immediately following the game. The official vote count was 3-2 against, with 3 dissenting judges from Eastern Bloc countries. The Americans were so upset by what happened in the final seconds and the denial of their appeal that they did not show up for the medal ceremony and refused to accept the silver medals. Those medals are still locked in a vault in Switzerland. This episode is brought to you in part by McFarland Books and their new release, Building the Milwaukee Bucks by Jordan Treske.
What does it take to build an NBA champion from scratch? Building the Milwaukee Bucks takes you behind the scenes, boardrooms, locker rooms, and courtside to see how Milwaukee went from no team to raising the championship trophy in just 3 years. With legends like Kareem, Oscar, Wayne Embry, Larry Costello, and much more leading the charge. This is the story every basketball fan should know. Get your copy of Building the Milwaukee Bucks at your favorite bookstore.
How about a complete contrast in a couple of baseball games that happened on this day in different years? On this day in 2020, the Atlanta Braves were swinging some hot bats against the Miami Marlins.
High fly ball to left. Brinson going back to the track, to the wall. He cannot get it. A 3-run homer by Darno. And Acuna launches that ball left center on the first pitch. No doubt about it to center field. Fly ball hammered deep left. It's a grand slam for Adam Duvall. I can't believe it.
The Braves hit 7 home runs, accounting for 18 runs. Adam Duvall hit 3 of those, and that was his second 3-home run game in 8 days. Every Brave who stepped up to the plate had at least 1 hit, most had 2 or 3, and they blew the game open with 11 runs in the second inning, then followed that up with 2 in the third, 3 in the fourth, 6 in the fifth, 3 in the sixth, and finished off with 4 in the seventh. Add all of those up, and you get 29 runs. And they scored all of those on just 23 hits. Quite the efficiency. The 29 runs eclipsed the old National League record of 28 set back in 1929 and came up a run shy of equaling the Major League record of 30 set by Texas in 2007. So now, contrast that game with what happened on this day in 1965 in LA when the Dodgers hosted the Cubs. Whereas the scoreboard in Atlanta in 2020 read more like a lottery jackpot number, the one in LA on this day in 65 looked like binary code. Sandy Koufax took the mound for the Dodgers on this night, and when Sandy had his good stuff going, he was tough to hit. When he had his best stuff, he was simply unhittable. Koufax had his best stuff on this night, and he mowed down hitter after hitter. Opposing him that night for the Cubs was Bob Hendley. Hendley was a bit of a journeyman, playing on his 3rd team in 5 seasons at this point in his career, but while he was not known for being one of the greats, he went head-to-head with Koufax on this night. Both men had no hitters into the 7th. In the bottom half, Dodger Lou Johnson slapped a Hendley pitch into the outfield and turned it into a double. A Cub error allowed him to score a little later in the inning for the first and only run of the night. Koufax kept his slate clean heading into the 9th inning. This game was not broadcast on television, but to be honest, you did not need television. Vin Scully was painting beautiful pictures on his radio broadcast that night.
3 times in his sensational career has Sandy Koufax walked out to the mound to pitch a fateful 9th, where he turned in a no-hitter. But tonight, September the 9th, 1965, he made the toughest walk of his career, I'm sure, because through 8 innings, he has pitched a perfect game. He has struck out 11. He has retired 24 consecutive batters. And the first man he will look at is catcher Chris Krug, big right-hand hitter.
Koufax struck out Krug and Joey Amalfitano to get to the last man standing between him and a perfect game.
2-2 to Harvey Keene. 1 strike away. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed. A perfect game.
It was just the 6th perfect game in the modern era. He struck out 14, including striking out the side and the top of the 9th. He threw just 113 pitches, 79 of which were strikes. This game set the record for fewest combined hits with just 1 and fewest base runners with 2. 1965 was a great year for Koufax. He finished with a Major League best 26 wins and an ERA of 2.04, also a Major League best. He would be awarded the Cy Young Award, and he finished second in the MVP voting, behind Willie Mays. On this day in 1960, it was the first ever regular season football game in the new American Football League. So this was the other league that had been started by wealthy businessmen that had initially wanted to put a team in the NFL, but they had been rebuffed, and so Lamar Hunt and others started their own league. There was a lot of oil money flowing through the AFL, especially in Texas, and the teams that had oil men as part of their ownership group spent lavishly on their players. But this first game was between the Denver Broncos and the Boston Patriots, and these two teams were considered to be more the working-class teams in the league. At this point, neither the Patriots or the Broncos had much money to burn on player salaries. The Patriots' Gino Cappelletti is the answer to that really obscure trivia question of who scored the first points in the AFL. Cappelletti booted a 34-yard field goal to give Boston the early lead. Denver scored a touchdown before the half to take a 7-3 lead into the locker room. The Broncos added more points in the third when Gene Mingo took a Patriots punt back 62 yards for the score. Mingo was Mr. Excitement and do everything for the Broncos. Later that year, he scored the first points at the old Mile High Stadium when he kicked a field goal. He also passed for a score in the 1960 season. Mingo still holds the record for longest touchdown in Broncos history with an 82-yard scamper, but that wouldn't come until 1962. Back to this game. When Mingo scored on the punt return, it was 13-3 Denver. Boston added a score in the fourth, but that was it. When the first AFL game went into the books, the Denver Broncos had beaten the Boston Patriots 13-10. So, from the Patriots' first game in franchise history to one of the more embarrassing and costly games for the Patriots in the history of the NFL. On this day in 2007, the Patriots were caught stealing the opposing team's signals from an area they were not supposed to be in. This was week 1 of the NFL season, and New England was on the road in East Rutherford, New Jersey against the New York Jets. Jets head coach Eric Mangini had been an assistant coach under Bill Belichick in New England, and so he knew some of his former boss's tricks. Mangini let some folks know to be on the lookout. As the clock was winding down in the first half, Matt Estrella, a video assistant with the Patriots, was nabbed red-handed videotaping Jets defensive coach's hand signals. A lot would happen in the 2 weeks that followed. First, the Patriots won the game against the Jets 38-14. When confronted with the evidence, Belichick admitted to filming opposing team signals. His defense to Commissioner Roger Goodell was that he thought it was legal. After a quick investigation, it was determined that the Patriots had been stealing signals since the 2000 season. Of course, they won the Super Bowl after the 2001, 2003, and 2004 seasons. Belichick was fined $500,000 for his role in Spygate, and the Patriots incurred a $250,000 fine. New England also was penalized a first-round draft pick. But then something curious happened that will keep conspiracy theorists talking for a while. At the end of the investigation and the fines, the spying tapes and all the notes were destroyed by the league. To many, including some in Congress, that seemed a bit shady. Senator Arlen Specter brought Commissioner Goodell to answer some hard questions in front of Congress with the directive, "We have a right to have honest football games." Specter wanted to know why there was such haste to impose the penalties and destroy the evidence before the full extent of Spygate was uncovered. Specter came up short of calling Goodell's actions a cover-up, but he did not exactly dismiss the idea. He raised the possibility of congressional hearings and canceling the NFL's antitrust exemption if Goodell's answers weren't sufficient. One of the biggest allegations that was never fully answered during this time was that the Patriots had videotaped St. Louis during a walkthrough practice prior to Super Bowl 36. The Rams had been double-digit favorites in that game. Instead, New England won their first NFL championship with the 20-17 win. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. The ancient city of Pompeii had a form of fast food restaurants called thermopoliums. Shopkeepers had jars of pre-made food displayed in their window for quick selection and payment. They weren't exactly making it a combo with a burger and fries. Instead, evidence shows that they were selling meat stews or lentil dishes. A spicy wine may have also been ready for quick sale. Archaeologists discovered a sealed jar they believe contained a version of the wine at some point. When they opened it nearly 2,000 years later, it still smelled strongly of vino. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.